What up? We are live. Please tell me if that light is too bright for you and bothering you at all. If you join me, get some iced coffee. We're going to talk about Justin Gaethje. Gaethje versus Dustin Poirier. Like I said, please let me know if this is centered. Also, if that light is too bright, I can take out the light. Super pumped about this fight. It's gonna be really good. Time is a bit dicey for me because I'm working so much. I don't really remember what week is what, and what we watched last week. Watched my man Mike Chandler last night. Big fan of that guy. And watching Michael Chandler, and then thinking about this fight, Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, thinking about those guys. What up, Paul? And Spider-Man, nice room. Yeah, let me know if that light is too bright. I'll take it out. I'm thinking about Michael Chandler, Eddie Alvarez, Justin Gaethje, painting. You're painting your living room. I painted this one. Thanks for the hard work. Hey, Dublin, what up, Paul? I'm going to Dublin June 22nd. I'm doing my show at Liberty Hall. My one-man show. I'll be in Dublin. If you want tickets, you go to Robin Black Live in Dublin. Just Google that, you'll find it. But yeah, Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, Eddie Alvarez, Michael Chandler, who was fighting last night. I am coming to Wales. Tommy just asked about Wales. I am going to Wales in July to Cardiff. It looks like I'm commentating Bare Knuckle Boxing, BKB, in Cardiff, and I'm going to try to put together a one-man show there too as well. But yes, so those four guys come to mind, and you get a particular type of fighter. I just made a post on Instagram, a little 1-minute version of these thoughts. And as I did it, I started looking at something called Anti-Fragile. It's a book I highly recommend. The author's name is Nassim Taleb. He also did a book called Black Swan, which you really got to read. It's just an incredible book, but the concept of anti-fragility, it looks at what is the opposite of fragile or breakable or brittle. Andrew, if you like my book recommendations, make sure you get Anti-Fragile. It's fucking fantastic. So what's the opposite of brittle or easily broken? And somebody would say robust or resilient, but that's not true. Resilient, resistant, good guess. Resilient, resistant, or robust are not the opposite of fragile. They take stress and don't break. Whereas fragile takes stress and breaks, and that sounds like the opposite. But the true opposite is something takes stress and becomes even stronger. And there are many examples. Oh, thanks, Spider-Man. My 1-minute breakdown on Instagram, yes. I may try to put it up on Twitter as well, but it makes more sense on Instagram because I can write a little more about it. When you talk in 1 minute, I get this a lot. I love my job. I love talking to you guys. I love sharing ideas. I love being pushed to try to find deeper ideas. It is what fuels me. But people will say, be more concise to me. And I do listen, although I'm also on my own trip. And so I'll do 1 minute. But 1 minute is too concise. Because I said, Justin Gaethje is tough and gritty, and that's not enough. You gotta fucking read this book, Anti-Fragile, and you'll get a sense of what he really is. There are all kinds of things. You see them in computer systems, you see them in all kinds of stuff. But if you imagine the idea that as you took stress and disorder, it actually armored you up. It didn't just, thank you, Crypto and coffee. I got coffee. Iced coffee. Taking stress and disorder and tension and randomness and chaos and pain and all these things, if you just didn't crack, that's robust. But if it made you stronger, diamonds are the hardest known substance. They are the opposite of fragile. Diamond, that's a good point. I should almost take that down and go in and put anti-fragility versus diamond. That's really cool. I mean, it's a nickname, the diamond. Louis, what up? It is a nickname. But I think the biggest understatement I could make is diamonds are hard, right? Dustin is hard. Dustin Poirier is a hard fucking dude. You know what I mean? So now you've got a hard dude against a guy who actually, every time he takes tension or stress or pain, becomes stronger. There's no other explanation for how over time, thank you guys, thanks for the kind words. There's no other explanation for over time becoming even grittier. You know, we hear but we are human, right? Because so your body will take, this is a psychological anti-fragility as well as a physical one. You become stronger, but we have limitations. The neurologies of our brain have limitations for how much we can get hit. You know, I had 9 pro fights and, trained hard for 8 years. I can tell I can't get hit. I can tell I get hit and it doesn't feel like it did back then, when I first fought. I talked to Carlos Condit about that when I was in Albuquerque, I think last March or April. And, I think Condit's fighting tonight as well, which is pretty awesome. I'm a huge fan of Carlos Condit. But if I'm Carlos Condit and I'm his coaches, I'm teaching him to take less damage. Did Carlos sound sick to me? No. When I was with him, he sounded great. And he seemed great. He seemed happy. But Carlos Condit was also very much like that. The Robbie Lawler fight, look at that. But there comes a limit, a human limit. So we cannot just get more and more anti-fragile as time goes on. The more stress and disorder we take, the more armored up we become and more resistant and resilient and tough, and it actually makes us stronger. That's what's happened with Justin Gaethje through 19 fights. And the fact that he ended up losing doesn't cancel it all out. It's still there. But there is something that does change in him, and that is the knowledge or the fact that he can draw on this fact. Somebody mentioned Michael Chandler, yes. So he can draw on this fact. Somebody said, do you think Dustin has to stay in the pocket to avoid leg kicks? Personally, I do not. Dinosaur ones cold, good point. The pressure has made them anti-fragile as well. No, I don't think the pocket, I think that's a risky place to be. I think the leg kicks, you don't just, there's a great question, by the way, so I'm letting it take me off track because it's taking me to a good place. Leg kicks, yeah, KSW is coming up soon, 2 hours. I'll be live tweeting while I watch KSW. Maybe I'll do a live Instagram too. So we can, if any of you guys follow me on Instagram at Robin Black MMA and you're watching KSW tonight, we can watch some of the main card together on Instagram Live if you're interested. Leg kicks. You don't just decide we need to avoid leg kicks or leg kicks are something we cannot have. You deal with leg kicks. You attack them back. There are a number of very specific ways. One is get out of the fucking way. You're here. My leg is here. You're planning to kick it. And either through moving it away or moving myself away, my leg is no longer there. So I just move my leg. Making you miss is always very good. If I make you miss, you are often off balance. You had intended to make contact. You are now off balance. I can do something back. Yes, Gaethje's wrestling is something I can only... When you're doing a 1 minute breakdown, things like lifelong wrestler is all you can kind of say. But yes, he's a genius of wrestling. And that is part of the anti-fragility that he has developed. That ability to become stronger is learned in the wrestling room. Russians and people from Chechnya, Dagestan, that whole area, there's something in the nature of how you train the children. In most sports, there's something like this that develops in them. So leg kicks, we can move. We can check a leg kick, which is the two of us will take damage, but I decide how and where we take that damage. That's what the true leg checking of a kick is. You are firing for the purpose of hitting soft tissue, a hard, yet soft tissue around a hard object. I am attacking that weapon with a bone directly in. But in case anyone doesn't realize this, the Cuban wrestlers' weight room is basically a pull-up bar. It's true. I know, it's amazing. It's amazing what some humans can do with this, we're all different, but we have it pretty soft if you're watching this from North America. And my friends from Ireland who mentioned, you're like Europe, very similar. We are educated and strong and we have lots of knowledge, but we don't have to. Sweden, Martin, what up? You got some Swedes on KSW this afternoon. But so a leg, just in case you don't know this, when I check a leg kick, it fucking hurts both of us. It hurts us both. But if I do not check a leg kick, it hurts only me when you kick me. Hey, Wheel X11 Montreal. So that you check a leg kick, or you take it. Hey, Ireland, what up? Venezuela, cool. It's cool hanging with you guys. It really is. It really, really is. Or I take that leg kick and I hit you, because when your leg is touching my leg, I know where you are, right? When your shin or foot, it's not something we want to do very often, but when it touches me, I know where you are. You're on the end of that leg, and I know where the leg starts, so I can get to you. So, Justin will throw vicious leg kicks at Dustin, and they fucking are vicious. Why do some top-level fighters tend not to check? It's a great question. In a lot of cases, it's because they know they can take 6 of those, because they're fucking unbelievably tough, and they've built up that toughness through training. If I kick any one of you who doesn't train, it will shock you how badly that hurts. I remember the first time I got kicked really hard, really, truly hard in sparring before, a year out of my first, my buddy Dustin from Russia. We worked on some videos together. You worked on the mines in Australia back in the day. Your asshole manager gave you an impossible task telling me pressure makes diamonds. I hate that guy. Could you talk about the jab in MMA for a bit? Well, the jab in anything is just the jab. Jab in MMA and kickboxing, in boxing, the jab is I will take my front hand and I will drive it straight out to its distance, and I will bring it back to protect myself. And I will do that and the jab in and of itself at its root is just the closest weapon to you. That's its main reason why it's so good. Can you tell why Luke doesn't read the stream chat? I don't know, man. Luke's my buddy, but probably it's very distracting too. Some people right now would be like, dude, you're on one track and you're going off others. So neither one's better. But also right now I'm talking about the jab, but other questions will come in, right? So it's tough. So the jab is just really the closest weapon to the front. So I can hit you furthest away without having to close up. So it's like fencing, right? In fencing, the front hand is there. Bruce Lee used concepts of fencing and combined it with the jab, and then reversed it and used the right hand, and actually made the right hand, the power hand, the front hand, for the same reason the jab is so good. That is, it is the thing that is closest to you that I can strike you with fastest. Hey, thanks a lot, Florida man. The fastest, I can close distance the quickest. It is the fastest weapon, and I can kind of protect myself and bring it back. There's a lot of great reasons. The turning sidekick's a beautiful weapon. I've trained Taekwondo my whole life, and that was always one of my very favorites. Trickier to use in fighting because it's a little more complex. So let's look at the simplicity, and all of this is relevant. The jab is a tool you'd want to use against Justin. Why are Justin's leg kicks so brutal? Because he's attached to the ground when he throws them. What's the upside to being so attached to the ground? Power. You can generate force. You can generate force with that connection to the earth. What's the downside? Sometimes you have to give up a little bit of mobility, because being light and bouncy and being connected are opposite ends of the spectrum. So he's drilling you with kicks, but he's connected heavily to the ground. So if you're Dustin, lighter weapon, light on the feet, draw out the kick, make him miss, jab him, dance, circle. These are very basic principles on very root principles. And even when we talk about them, and sometimes these parts of the conversation are really interesting still to me, and I enjoy them. They're very rudimentary concepts at fighting, and my curiosity is always so much beyond that. I know that if you wanted to fight a guy with heavy leg kicks, a light mobile jab would be a great thing. Now, I know not everybody knows it, and one option for my job would be to go into those things, but I feel like you can get that anywhere, and you do get that anywhere, and you can get that on Twitter. A lot of people know nobody baits a straight up knee to the face. No, nobody does bait a straight up knee to the face. And if I can get you dropping down. That was one of the things Eddie did very, 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 very well. Justin will draw you in and just shell and take him. You've seen this in all his fights. Shell and take him. And then what's the downside of that? I'm fucking taking punches. What's the upside of that? Just like I was saying about the leg kick. I know where you are. If I'm here and your fist is hitting me, you're on the end of that fist. I know where you are. And so Justin connected to the ground where power comes in. God bless Eddie Alvarez. His only strategy works to beat Justin. Eddie Alvarez believes only his strategy works to beat Justin. No, I don't think there's any only, but I think, honestly, one, you need to understand this concept of anti-fragility, and you need to accept it, right? You need to accept the fact that Justin is going to take twice or more the damage of what other people do, and that in and of itself is very, very difficult to deal with. Means you're going to get tired, you're going to get discouraged, it's going to be intimidating, there's going to be moments, even if you've thought of it in advance, where he feels inhuman to you and indestructible and immortal. He was through every fucking fight up until Eddie. Eddie told me, so there's, on this very channel, I sit down with Eddie for about 20, doing any work for KSW this weekend. I'll be watching it, drinking coffee, and somebody just said, what is anti-fragility? It's, go back and watch the beginning of this chat, or get this book, Anti-Fragility by Nassim Taleb. It's fucking brilliant. It's brilliant. And these are the conceptual things that help expand, take you off the regular track. But you have to understand this about him. You have to accept it, and you have to accept the fact that it's going to be intimidating. You have to be capable of matching his enthusiasm, which Eddie did. And because you're going to have to stay with him long enough that even if you have a strategy that works, you're going to have to stay with him long. Somebody said, Eddie is like, hey, if you're going to be a troll, these guys will probably take you out. All the other guys will probably take you out. We don't talk shit about fighters here, ever. Is gold fragile once you heat it up? No, I think it softens. Justin has to be finished. He does not lose decisions. Not yet. But these things, none of these things are permanent truths. You change them. So you're gonna have to match his enthusiasm, and then you're going to have to. I haven't seen Nicky Ryan, Gio Martinez. That was an upset. I understand, but I haven't seen it. We are the way Eddie approached it. Match his enthusiasm, and then use that, stay with him long enough that whatever strategic things you've figured out have an effect on him, whether it makes him slower or makes him more fatigued or slowly breaks him apart, whatever you can do, you have to stay with him long enough for work, which will be the third round if it works ever. The 5-round fight is going to be a terrifying thing. It'll be a 4th round, it'll be a 5th round or a 4th round or a 3rd round or never, right? So Eddie's game was draw out that, and then when it happens, drill him to the body. Because everybody else would just try to finish him, and then he would counter off of that, and he knew where you were on the end of punches. Every single person who steps in the UFC octagon is 99.9% more badass than everyone else. It's 100% true. You just made a 99.9% thing that is 100% true. Anyone who criticizes these people, they don't understand life, and you shouldn't take them very seriously. So Eddie, instead of just attacking the shell, would change down, squat down, reduce his center of mass lower his center of mass, and drill him in the body, right? Now, yes, that's cool, man. Don't worry. If you're kidding, joking is joking. Drilling him in the body, and then that does a number of things. We might affect his breathing, although again, if you start at the beginning in the concept of anti-fragility, and you read that book, you'll see that might not. That's the other thing. People are like, oh man, he can't take those leg kicks all night. He might. Some people do. It's like, oh, those body shots are going to add up in the later rounds. You hear that in boxing all the time. They might not. Like, we make these statements as if they are 100% true. And even the people making them don't necessarily mean them that way. They're just saying stuff. Body shots, those will add up in the later rounds. They mean those could add up in the later rounds. because we've heard that so many times, we believe it's true. That I don't know Bullard that much. I don't know. There's so many different aspects of the world of fighting right now that I'm studying, and countries all over the world. So I'm still, I can't know them all right now. But they may not. That may not be true. And Justin Gaethje may be one of those guys. Keep drilling the body. Might affect them. Might not. Might affect them, but not enough. Who knows? But we do that enough. Now he starts to take this seriously. And now Eddie started to add in with that the threat of the takedown. You saw that a lot, where he would drop down and boom to the body, and then he would drop down and kind of pretend he was going in and feint that he was coming in, which would get Justin to react, and then he could go to the head. It was conceptually simple, but then sometimes that idea, people will say, "Oh, we know how to beat Justin Gaethje." Does that mean I can do it? No, Gaethje will fuck me up. I have the strategy. I know the plan. People will be like, "Oh, the book is out." So what? Everybody in the world might read the book or know the strategy. You still have to win. I can do that all day and nothing. I'm not going to win. So you have to. Joe Rogan, turning side can liver, you would die. You've been in the cage, you train at Team Curran. Oh, wicked, you fight. Would UFC people kick my ass? Yes. Does that mean I can't criticize motivation or cowardice of another man? No, you can't. No, you can't. No, you can't. I mean, actually, you can. You can do whatever you want. But it says something really sad about you. It does. It does. It says something about jealousy and about your weakness when you do that. It's probably, if you really stopped and looked at it, you'd probably go back and realize a turning point in your life would be when you look at yourself and go, this is a weakness in me, that I am looking at Eddie Alvarez and I'm criticizing him. It's a weakness in you. And I'm not saying it to be cruel. If you see that, and you really pause and you really look at it, you examine it, could be the turning point in your life. Life could get better from that day forward. But I have a thing about criticizing people like this that are doing things that can only inspire us if we're being honest. And there's a number of them. Usually I say, when I see people who do, whether they're just on Twitter or they're on a website or whatever, and they want to analyze fighting, and they start talking about the flaws or the weaknesses, you can't do that if you've never fought. And that's why when you say I've been in the cage, I question it, because 99% of the time I've said out loud, people who've never fought will criticize, and people who have fought would never criticize, because when you criticize, you go, why didn't he do this? And I know this is slightly off topic, but I think I can make this connect. No, I fought 22-year-olds. I fought 22-year-olds when I was 40. And I lost most of the time, but I will not criticize somebody. This is a key. This one I really believe is important. When you're watching Eddie Alvarez, when you're watching Dustin Poirier, when you're watching Justin Gaethje, when you watch Francis Ngannou in round 5, any of these things, this is I mean this. If you can see this, when you yell, why aren't they doing X? Or why aren't they doing Y? Or why can't they? Or they should have. This is a truth. What they are doing in those moments is literally the best they can do. It's the best they can do. Because what's happening is chaos, panic, fear, pain, the moments of terror or failure, risk. You can't see, you can't breathe. Your brain isn't functioning right because there's a professional athlete kicking and punching you in the head, or just the fear of that happening, or the concern, or the confusion. The things that they do in the moments they do them are truly the best they can do in that moment. Someone said, why didn't that guy go for that fucking knee bar? He couldn't. In those moments, and this is true of you, and this is true of everybody all the time, when you do something, you're like, well, I could have done better. No, you couldn't. You could have done what you did. Because that moment in time was affected by everything around you. I could have done better if my mom hadn't been sick that week. Your mom was sick that week. And that was the best you could do. I would have done better if only I trained harder. You didn't train harder. And you couldn't train harder, or you would have trained harder. Something in you, some weakness or fear, prevented you from doing that. This isn't just true when we are... Why can't Stefan Struve use his range? That's the best he can do. He's trained. And I'm not picking on him. He's just one that, and he does use his range way better than people assume. Or why is Ronda doing this? Like, why didn't she? They are doing the best they can do. Somebody brought up avoiding a rematch. People, you understand. People make decisions based on what's best for them, not based on what you might think. All humans are trying to make a decision. So this is a really interesting thing that's brought up. People, we do this a lot, all of us. You know, that guy, why didn't he accept this? He needs to take that fight. He owes it. You know, George St. Pierre can't retire now. He has a rematch. These guys don't have to do fuck all. They're human beings. They're like you. They're like you. You do the things that are right for you or your family or who you are, or learning or avoiding fear, or, you know, avoiding being embarrassed, or to make money, or you do the things that are right for you. And that means rematching this guy or taking the money fight. People would criticize Tyron Woodley. Tyron Woodley's doing exactly what Tyron Woodley wants to do. Oh, that guy just wants... What you should do is admire people who are not swayed by the opinions of others. So when people are like, Tyron Woodley needs to defend his whatever, he's doing his best to avoid a bad matchup. You don't know that. You have no idea what you're talking about. You're observing something, and you're using it to anger yourself and judge another person. People aren't avoiding bad matchups. They're living their fucking life. And Eddie Alvarez has had 40 of the hardest fucking fights that you can ever imagine. And you don't get to judge him. You don't get to. And you certainly don't get to say he's avoiding a bad matchup. He's going towards this, or moving away from that, or changing this, or deciding that. It's his fucking life. It's your life too. And in your life, you can judge other people and project shit like that. Or you can sit there and look for the good. Look for the positive. Be empathetic. What would I do in that case? And if your answer is, I know I'd have to take the rematch, well, that's you. But that may not be right. When you're getting paid for stuff, you can be judged for it. Yeah, you can. I said that. You can. You can do it. It's not doing you any good, though. It's not doing you any good. Should we appreciate Bob Sapp because he's doing what's best for him? You can admire Bob Sapp. You can admire Bob Sapp. You can look at Bob Sapp and roll your eyes. But Bob Sapp is doing what's best for him. He's doing exactly what's best for him. I'm not his fan. I don't enjoy it. But it's his fucking life. You're going to do what's best in your life. Your life, whatever your life is, mine, yours, Bob Sapp's, anybody, if ours is so fucking perfect that we can judge other people's decisions, then we wouldn't judge them at all. If our life was so perfect, we wouldn't be sitting around judging anybody. We wouldn't. Bob Sapp can fucking do what he likes. Just don't be his fan. Don't be his fan. If they want to pay him in Japan to make $1 million to cover up, would you like to see Ben Askren in the UFC? I would. Valerie, we really lost track here. We did. We did. That's part of the fun of... Somebody said, why doesn't Luke respond to these things? He doesn't want to lose track on this level. You know? Eddie thinks Dustin... You don't know what Eddie thinks. This is the flaw. This is the flaw in our criticism. You don't have a fucking clue what Eddie thinks. You don't. You don't know what? Nah, thanks, Valeria. You don't have a clue what Eddie thinks. You don't have a fucking clue. And this is where, so this, I'll get out of here with the recommendation that you read Anti-Fragile, and even if you're a psychic, because that ain't real, is I'm going to leave you with this idea. Our biggest flaw when we look at fighting, this will apply to when we look at politics and when we look at our friends and when we look, you're an Eddie Alvarez fan, you don't know what he's doing. He's trying to belittle Justin, and you don't know what the fuck he's doing and why he's doing. You have no idea. You have no idea. And you never will. And he has no idea what you're thinking. And you have no idea what I'm thinking. Yes, please get that book. You'll love it. And he's not trolling anymore. He's trying to work his way into figuring out how this isn't bad. How what he's doing isn't bad. And that's okay. But sometimes what we're doing is bad. Sometimes what we're doing is bad. It's bad for you. Bad for him. It's bad for us. You know, what we're doing. There's a bias called what you see is all there is. That is the biggest flaw of almost everything that we're doing when we look at politics, fighting, our friends, your wife, your girlfriend, your whatever. The biggest bias is we see. Joe Rogan said something about Khabib, and people like Joe Rogan hates Khabib. You didn't hear the other 23 hours and 47 minutes that Joe spoke about Khabib that day, or the last 27 weeks of what Joe said. You heard a sentence, or two, or four. It's not what you see is all there is the biggest weakness that we have. And if you and that's another book that is fucking amazing. So hopefully we enjoy the fight tonight. Justin is incredibly, he gets more resilient because the way that he's fought. It makes him even more difficult to deal with. Dustin has great straight punches. He moves well. If there's kicks, he will look to deal with them appropriately. And Eddie, we figured out the approach that he took. So that's all we got in 30 minutes. But we also got Anti-Fragile. Read that book. And definitely read this book. It's called Thinking Fast and Slow. Okay? Fucking Anti-Fragile is a great book, but this book will change your life. And it'll certainly change that guy's life. Thinking Fast and Slow. The biggest issue, I say to you, what's 2 plus 2? You got 4. I say, what's 227 times 350,000? You don't know. You'll have to go and really study and do some work. Those are 2 different mental processes. Why is Eddie doing what he's doing? Or what does Joe think of Khabib? That's the second process. 327 times 37,000. That's the process you need to find those answers, if you can find them at all. But the process we use is 2 plus 2 equals Joe hates Khabib. Or 2 plus 2 is Eddie's ducking Dustin. Like, we are using what we see is all there is part of the brain to make judgments on other people and on things and on fights and on meaning of things in our world around us. And it is fucking with us. So read that book. Anyways, it's going to be a great fight. If I did get too off track for some of you and you didn't enjoy it, I apologize. Please let me know. Let me know on Twitter. I can't always read the YouTube ones. A quick thing is like YouTube is a lot more negative than Twitter or Instagram. And more negative than YouTube is chat rooms. And more negative than chat rooms are like message boards. More negative than message boards are old style chat rooms. And why is this? Because over time, the longer that any platform lives, the more the negativity grows within it. So I can't read that one as much, and I don't get to read it as much, and I don't always enjoy it. But go back and let me know on Twitter if these tangents or answering the questions is not as good for these types of conversations, or if you prefer it. Because some of the stuff we talked about might end up being useless nonsense to you. But we'd have been out of here in 12 minutes because we know what Justin Gaethje is. We know you want to move your feet when you fight him. We know a jabbing from the outside would be important, but he's going to try to leg kick us. When he tries to leg kick us, if we can hurt his shins with his while he does and counter, or we can get out of the way, make him miss and counter. We know he's an outstanding wrestler. So if he gets down, will Dustin play his guard or will he work back to his feet? You know, we know how Eddie beat him. We know those things. So we'd have been out of here 12 minutes ago. And that would have been perfectly fine too. All these tangents are extra. So if we look at them that way, please let me know what you think. Anyways, it's always my pleasure, and I really appreciate you guys. The chance to have these kinds of conversations really is lucky, and I feel very fortunate to be able to do it. I'm very thankful, and I'm very grateful. Thanks, guys. I don't know how to click this off. Cheers.